Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Longo Drives. I am Mike, and with
I'm Mel.
me, hello, Mel. How are you?
Hi.
Well, we had something slightly different planned for our podcast, but somebody did a thing.
Somebody did a thing and needed to come in immediately for our podcast
to
today.
talk to us about this, right? It was like, we have to talk about this because this is super duper important. And once we started talking, it made sense, right?
Yeah, it's pretty important.
So we're going to do this because I think if I was in a situation, I would have really had like a lot of thoughts and feelings and try to figure out this whole thing. But I want to hear about it. So we're gonna bring all the listeners up to speed. We're gonna have Doug Eroh, General Manager, President of Longo Toyota, back on the set with us. We're super excited. Doug, you did a thing. You got to tell us all about this. What is this?
Well, thank you for having me back. I did do a thing. I went to Washington, D.C., our nation's capital.
Yeah.
Okay, and out of all places to go,
Of all places.
why'd you go there? And then also, how'd you end up there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and the fun part about our business is some days we get to talk about products, some days we got to talk about the experience. But for this purpose, I got to talk about policy, right?
Ooh, fun.
Sometimes not very exciting, right?
No.
But it impacts all of us,
Yeah.
right? So I had a chance to go speak with our elected representatives who are great people. We had a chance to interact with them and talk a little bit to them about what our consumers are telling us about our business and what the regulations are coming in our business and how that relates to our customers' experience.
So everything in between, everything.
So you're going to Washington, D.C. Did you feel like you were going to the principal's office? Did you feel like you were in trouble?
No, of course not. Of course not. No, we want to, look, it's exciting, right? You get to go there. There's, the monuments and, the buildings and, the people and the pomp and circumstance. This is really cool, right? But we had to get down to business, right? We had to talk to them about what our customers are telling us, ultimately what their constituents are telling us. And there's some very significant regulations and legislation that's going to be that is coming down the road. It's going to be in place later this year that could potentially impact the choices that customers have on the cars they want to buy.
So the biggest takeaway really is for you to voice the consumer end of it.
Exactly.
And everything that we're doing on the back end from an automotive part.
Yeah, I think it's to tell our story, who we are, who we represent in the community, and what our customers are ultimately telling us about what they want.
What about your biggest aha moment? You're there, you're Washington, it's impressive. You're talking to people that you probably never thought you're going to be talking to. And all of a sudden you get floored by, you go, wait a second.
Look, I think in our business, we get all immersed in the products and everything that we sell, and we're familiar with things. But we got to remember, at any given time, only 2% of the population is in the market for a car. So at any given time, 98% of the people are not in the market, and they may not know what's going on. So the aha to me is, in order to let people know about the policies that are coming that are going to affect customer choice, we really have to educate from the ground up because people don't know.
Okay.
They're not in the middle of it. They're not looking for a car. They will be at some point because everyone needs transportation, but we need to educate everyone, elected representatives, the community, everyone on what these policies are and what impact they're going to have on customer choice.
Right. So speaking of education, a lot of people don't know a lot of the different products that not only Toyota offers and Lexus, but also all the other different manufacturers, right? And because there's so many different great products to choose from, people also don't know that there's different powertrains to choose from when they are shopping a car, that 2%, right?
Yep.
So when we actually break it down, it's really important for them to know whether or not it's going to suit them, but also what kind of technology that they're buying.
Sure.
One of the biggest things is the word electric and electrified gets thrown around like nobody's business.
Absolutely. And we throw these terms around like they're nothing, and everybody understands what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Hybrids, plug-in hybrids, fuel cells, battery electric cars,
to
EVs,
a lot of people,
right?
it's the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't, people, and to 98% of people aren't in the market. They don't know, they shouldn't know, right? So it's our job to educate them.
Yeah.
But, we sell all these different powertrains, but it starts with, we often group them into something called electrified, right?
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, last year, Longo Toyota, 60% of our sales were electrified vehicles. Does that mean 60% of the cars we sold were electric cars? No, they're electrified. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does
What's
that mean?
The definition of electrified?
Well, I don't know. But we've got our definition is basically anything with a battery
Okay.
that propels the car in some state of driving.
So it has to have an electric
electrified.
motor
Yes.
and a battery that propels it.
Yeah.
But it could have something else.
It might, right? It might.
Okay.
Well, I think it's going to come down to the degree of that battery. So let's make it simple, right? So you have a
Okay.
hybrid vehicle that has a hybrid battery.
Okay.
The car is able to drive on electric mode in low RPM, low speed conditions. You never have to charge it. It gets you extended gas mileage. It gets you better range, right? It's a beautiful thing. Toyota came out with the first hybrid in 1997 with the Prius. We're selling that Prius, or next, another generation of it today. It's a phenomenal car, but it's evolved, right? Now, we taught people for 20 years that you didn't have to plug a hybrid in. Then all of a sudden we came out with a plug-in hybrid to confuse everyone.
Perfect.
Right? And when
Throw it out with the bathwater, yeah.
The plug-in comes out, it's like, what is that, right? Well, you can actually plug your car in and get extended range and drive on EV-only mode, right? For 40 miles. You can drive, you're like, oh, it's only 40 miles. Oh, God, how am I going to survive? Well, guess what? How long is your commute? How long does it take you to drive? How many miles do you drive to work?
10 miles.
10 miles,
Yeah.
okay. 10 miles
7
here,
one
10
way.
miles back,
7 one way.
So look, most people, their commute is
That's it.
less than 40 miles, right? Or less than 20 miles. There's certainly longer ones, but most people, the average person, if they have access to charging, they may be able to charge their vehicle at home or at work and never use gas with a plug-in hybrid. So that might work for somebody,
Yep.
right? Then you have EVs, battery electric vehicles, which are all electric, right? Which means
100%
there's
electric,
no
the whole thing.
gasoline, right? You're running on electric all the time, but coming with that is some more responsibility. Now I need to charge my car. I need to figure out where I can charge my car. Do I have a charger at home? And I can get into fuel cells, which is a whole nother topic, but there's all these different powertrains and we just kind of throw them around as electrified, right? But our job is to make sure, we do a needs assessment with every customer and make sure that the car that we sell is right for them. The beauty of it is at Toyota or Lexus, we have a hybrid powertrain in almost every single car, every single model we sell now. So we have choices for people based on their needs and what their life brings to them every day. So we're fortunate to have that diversity of our lineup.
And the reason we're explaining this is because what did you learn in Washington about electrified versus electric?
Well, we had to do just this, right? So I think I mentioned earlier that 60% of the cars that we sold last year were electrified, but only 2% were electric, right?
Full electric then.
Full electric.
Only
And the
2%.
reason that this is important is because there's regulation that's coming down the pipe that will be in effect with the 2026 model year, which in our world is 9 months from now or less.
Yeah.
That 35% of the cars that we will have to sell will need to be electric, battery electric, okay? That means today it's 2%. For us, we need to go to 35%. Now, the industry is a little higher. Of course, you have other battery electric only manufacturers in there, but even if you count all those, there's still a big gap between where we are today and where the regulation is. And what's in between that gap is the customer. Are there that many more customers that want to have an electric car? More and more people are going to absolutely drive electric, but there's no way that we can get up to that level that quickly. So our job was to go to DC, explain to our legislators where the customer is today, where the regulation is today, and that there's a problem. There's a gap here, right? That we have to solve together. That's our goal would be to solve it together, not have, industry litigation and things like that. We need to solve it together and really listen to our customers together and listen to what they're telling us. And what they're telling us is EVs are really cool, but not everyone is quite ready for one.
Right.
So therefore, people are choosing hybrids. They're choosing plug-in hybrids because those are more no compromises. I don't have to give up any lifestyle. I don't have to buy a charger. I don't have to think about charger, things like that. So how do we close that gap, right? Or how do we give ourselves more time? Because our goal is simple. Everyone's goal is the same. We do want to reduce carbon emissions. We do want to have a more sustainable auto fleet, but we have to bring the customer along and we have to make sure they have what they need.
So let me ask you this. Is Toyota alone in that 60% versus 2%? Like,
Is this accounting for all the OEMs?
Yeah, I think we're talking about our business, right?
Right.
I think the beauty of our business is that we do offer these choices to everyone. And when you offer all choices to everyone, you say, you know what, Baskin-Robbins, 31 flavors.
Right.
Which flavor would you like to have? And most of the people are telling us we'd like that hybrid flavor because it gives us, no compromises driving, and we like to choose that, right?
The best of both worlds.
Now, some manufacturers, there's others that make only EVs. Of course, you have one flavor, you're going to choose that flavor. Or, if you have more in your lineup and you have less hybrids or less options, you're going to choose those other options. Or you're going to be incentivized to choose those options, whether that be a subsidy from the government
Right.
or a subsidy from the manufacturer. So
going back to the regulations
Sure.
and also the percentage that you mentioned, we're at the 2% right now.
Yes.
And then we need to be at a 35% by what year?
model year 2026.
By 2026, right?
So we have this year.
Yeah.
That's it.
So for those who don't know much about these regulations,
Sure.
they're also known as mandates.
Sure.
I mean, can you explain a little bit more on
Yeah.
what that really is?
It's a great
And are we alone in the U.S.
Yeah.
with mandates? Like, is this just us?
Yeah, look, I think if you look at some people use the word mandate, right? You'll hear EV mandate.
Right.
And, you can see it as that. It can be interpreted as that because 35% of the cars in 26 need to be EV. So they're mandating that you have to drive an EV or you have to sell an EV.
Yeah.
So
for the United States.
for California, and as some people may or may not know, California has the authority, as given to them by the federal government over many decades, to set their own emissions policies, okay? And that's called California emissions, right? And there's 12 other states that follow California emissions and adopt the same regulations. So,
interesting.
So it's not really the whole country. The U.S. has its own emission standards. Then there's California emission standards, which are stronger.
Yeah.
Now, in a perfect world, for the ease of doing business and for the consumer, it would be great if there was one single standard for the entire country, but there's not.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with that. We're here in California, so we have to deal with that, right? And again, we believe in carbon emission reduction. I personally drive an EV. I drive a zero emission vehicle. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's probably not for everyone, right?
Yeah,
Some
for sure,
days it's not even for me.
So with mandates though, kind of just touching it quickly, the main categories of it are like, what is it exactly? The percentage?
What are they pushing us on?
Yeah.
We got California, we got the 12 copycat states, right? What are they saying? What do we have to meet?
Ultimately, these states would like us to be at zero emission for 100% of the cars we sell. In fact, the regulations call for that by 2035.
Wow.
So it started already.
Which means no more gasoline cars.
Correct. By 2035, they're saying you can't have a gas car, right? Now, we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves, right? We're not worried about 2035, but I am worried about 2026. So we start at 35 and then it goes up a little bit every year and you get to 100%, right? Which is a whole other world. But we're not going to get, like I said, we're not going to get too far in front of ourselves. What we need to worry about what's in front of us today, where the consumer is today, because those are the facts we have today. We know where our customers are. We know what, given their Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors, we know which flavors they're choosing.
Hybrid.
Right?
No more.
And that is, where they're at. Now, it's a ratio, right? So 35%. Now, there's two ways to get to a ratio, right? You increase, the numerator, or you increase or you decrease
the denominator.
Right?
That's
So
it.
So where I'm most concerned for our customers is that if the manufacturers are forced, in order to meet the regulation, to reduce the denominator, which is reducing the number of cars available for sale in California. So instead of having your 31 flavors,
there's no more Baskin-Robbins.
Now you're going to have 20 flavors, or then you're going to have 15, then you're going to have 10, right? And what that means is that customers who want these cars are not going to be able, customers that want these cars, like hybrids and plug-in hybrids and
choice.
They're not going to have them. They're not going to be able to get them, right? And not everyone is going to want to be forced to drive an EV. Not everyone is going to want to be forced to drive any kind of car. They were going to want the freedom of choice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Our customers want the freedom of choice, and they want to choose the vehicle they want within the lineup. We give them those choices, and our customers are overwhelmingly choosing to have a no compromises vehicle.
Which is
a hybrid.
Of course.
Right? Now, we're going to sell more EVs. More customers will adopt EVs. That's a good thing. But we can't get there at the pace that we're being expected to. It'll be bad for the customer.
So let's rewind a little bit here. You go to Washington, you're with all these legislators. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, but it's an interesting topic. There's some strong aha moments, right? If we don't, for lack of a better way to say it, if Toyota and other OEMs don't fall in line and these mandates are not met, what kind of repercussion? Because if it's a mandate by the government, then obviously something bad's going to happen, right? What is that?
Sure. There are regulations that are out there that have teeth in them, and those teeth are fines, right? And so the way the law is written today, if a manufacturer, doesn't matter who it is, if a manufacturer doesn't meet the regulation,
right,
they are fined, get ready for this, $22,000 per vehicle that they miss the fine by. $22,000 a car,
That's
right?
insane.
That's steep.
That's a whole nother car.
There's manufacturers in California, Toyota being one of them, that sell 200,000 cars, right? So what's the gap? There's a lot of math, but I can tell you that's a lot of dollars. You don't need to do the math.
That is so crazy.
Yeah,
so this fine is set in stone, like no matter who it is, like
matter
Rolls
who it
Royce,
is.
Right.
Porsche,
Absolutely.
anyone.
Doesn't matter.
Per car.
But per car. Now, I'll give you but wait, there's more. So,
Oh, there's more.
Oh boy.
are there any other ways that a manufacturer can hit its...
Oh, this is a tricky one because I know a little bit about this
Yeah.
one. Oh
So
boy.
are there any other ways a manufacturer can hit its
Yeah.
goal, its percentage, right? Or get closer to it? And the answer is yes, there is. There's a, for lack of a better term, loophole in the law
it is.
that allows manufacturers to go buy credits from other manufacturers who may be exceeding their target, right? So let's just call it what it is. Tesla.
Yeah.
You think they're going to hit 35% EV?
They're done.
They sell 100% EV.
100%.
They only make EVs, of course, right?
They're cheating.
Easy answer, right?
So they got a surplus.
So they have a big surplus of credits. And what does Tesla do with those credits? They sell them back to other manufacturers. And I can tell you this, Tesla made about $2 billion last year just on the sale of credits to other manufacturers. So we've created a cottage industry. It's helping Tesla. Whether that's good or bad, that's for other people to decide. But that's a fact.
And that was
That's crazy.
billion with a B as in boy.
Yes.
I mean, I have to ask. 'Cause,
Billion with a B.
Sometimes in the
Billion
You
with
mean
a B.
Bravo?
if the listener's driving
Bravo.
and the road's a little bumpy, they're like, was that with an M or a B? No, B as in boy.
B is in battery electric. Yeah, look, I think when you get into these regulations and you get into enforcement, we don't want to have to go down that path, right?
Right.
We want to be good citizens. We want to produce cars that do reduce emissions. By the way, how about this for a statistic? I'm not sure if you know this, but Toyota told us that for every one battery electric vehicle they can make 90 hybrids, right?
Yep.
And the cool thing about those 90 hybrids is they actually reduce carbon emissions by 37 times more
Yeah.
than the one battery electric vehicle. So,
Okay, why is this not talked about
right,
more?
it needs to be talked about more, right?
It was, and they tried to talk about it. It was a campaign that they had, and it was called 1690.
Yep.
For every one
Yeah.
electric vehicle made, you could make 6 plug-in
Sure.
hybrids
Mhm.
and 90 regular hybrids.
Right.
And to Doug's point, the 6 or the 90 of the plug-in versus the hybrid would reduce the emissions to the same point of an electric.
That can't be overemphasized enough,
Yeah.
right? Is that ratio. So we have customers that want to buy them.
Right?
They're choosing them. They're doing their job to reduce emissions,
Right.
Maybe not at the rate that others would like, but we have to keep it in balance, right? Because what we don't want to do is get out of balance where our customers are being required to drive a certain vehicle that are now becoming unaffordable, right? Because they're more expensive and they require subsidies to sell versus something they actually want. So we've got to bring the consumer along. We've got the technology. The beauty of this whole thing is that technology will continue to get better over time. They'll have better choices in EVs. They'll have longer ranges. They'll have solid state batteries. There's all charging times will be reduced. There's all kinds of cool things that are coming. We're just not there yet as an industry.
Yeah.
And we've got to get there.
And I think to that point, Doug, one of the things that is really, really that shock factor is that if you purchased one Tesla thinking that you're saving the planet, you could purchase 90, we could sell 90 Priuses and have the same net effect to our global cause of saving the planet that you would by buying one electric. And that's shocking.
Yeah,
really, I think that we really need to get that word out. Like, let's talk about that.
I think we all got to get the word out. And frankly, that's why we went to DC, is really to educate, have a face-to-face conversation with our elected leaders,
Right.
help them understand. Look, they have a lot on their plates. They're hearing from all different constituencies and industries, right? They need to understand from our point of view, right? Because they've got a lot going on. We need to help educate them because they just have a lot of ground to cover. So, but the one thing that is very important, I think, is there's the agency of the government, it's the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, measures the carbon reduction by manufacturer. And the latest data that's available for that was from 2022. And guess which manufacturer reduced the most emissions?
Oh, I want it to be
Us.
It's Toyota.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
The reason it's Toyota is because we are offering these carbon reducing engines, hybrids, in every powertrain in every car we offer.
Right.
So there's breadth and depth to that is allowing us to make real progress when it comes to emissions.
So when you were at this meeting, it was really just to get that point across,
Yes,
right? Because
yes.
they didn't know the market like we do.
Yeah, of course.
So for them to hear it directly
Yeah.
from when we're providing to the consumers, was it kind of like a wake up call, or was it something that they kind of already
How
knew?
did they respond?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think our elected representatives were very receptive to the message. They listened very well. I think they, for the most part, agreed with where the customer is and understood where the customer is and agreed that something needs to change with the current laws, right? What is it going to change? Do we need to buy more time? Do we need to, ask the regulation to include hybrids
Yeah.
in their calculation?
That would be smart,
There's
though.
there's some real opportunity, and I hope we can continue the dialogue we've had with them.
So question, we're talking about the overall EV market. So you go to Washington, we're talking EV market, we're looking at what's happening. Mel, we're discussing how it's just been drying
Sure.
up.
Yes.
But also in the news is this almost false sense that the EVs are selling or they're being leased. What does it take to move an EV? Like, what are all the manufacturers doing to clear out this massive wealth of inventory that's sitting around? Because we're starting to see some of those move. What is it? What's driving it?
Yeah, look, I think there's the market. Let's be clear on a few things. The market for EVs is growing. That's a fact, right? Over time, right? Is that growth starting to slow down? Yes, it is, right? What's driven that growth in the EV market? Customer demand a little bit, right? Some people want to have that car. They want to participate in zero emission driving, not a problem. But what is also driving that growth is subsidies, right? And the subsidies are coming either at the manufacturer level or at the government level.
Sure.
So we look at a Toyota RAV4 hybrid, right, which is one of our most popular cars, one of our best-selling cars, right? When you think about subsidies, right, you look at a RAV4 hybrid, right? RAV4 hybrid has essentially none, right? It's our best-selling car. The Toyota has very minimal incentive support on the car. People buy it because they want it, right? Then you look at a car like another car in our lineup, like the BZ, and you can really take this to any of the EVs. Honda's got their Prologue. They're all in the same boat. They're all $15,000, $16,000 worth of incentives on that car, right? In order to get it.
Massive.
So when
massive
you see
amounts of money.
When you see headlines that say EV sales are up, you have to peel the onion back a little bit. Yes, there's over time and over years, yes, they are growing and they will continue to grow, I think. But we've hit a period of stagnation because we've kind of run out of customers that really just want to have an EV. Now the people that are buying these are ones that are buying the deal.
Right.
And that deal is only going to last so long because either the manufacturers are going to get tired of supporting them or the government subsidies may run out or get changed. It's all subject to, future regulation and legislation. But where's the actual consumer demand? I look at the cars that don't require any incentives to sell, and that tells me where the real customer wants to be, where your grandma wants to be, right? The car they want.
They want the car.
She kept raving about it. Like
raving.
She came here to the dealership.
And you briefly mentioned Honda and the Prologue. That was the first time I think in history that Honda introduced a vehicle with heavy incentives on it. And you saw what it did. Like they launched it with a super low lease payment and the thing went through the roof.
Of course.
Great car. They did a good job with it. And again, we don't have anything against the EVs, but we're watching a lot of behind the scenes happening with the EVs. Important question.
Yes.
There's a lot of about face. Porsche was all EV and said, nope. I go, U-turn, Audi, BMW,
Alfa Romeo.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them. And we're industry insiders and we constantly were reading like, they're going to go back to combustion. What is Toyota going to do? What do you know? What is the inside skinny from your side?
Yeah, I think, look, all the things you mentioned are true, right? And I think what manufacturers are doing is, look, they had this regulation to meet. It's very serious, right? There's real teeth in them, in these regulations. There's real money. There's insane amount of money, right, associated with the fines, right? So you, as a manufacturer, you need to do your job and start developing product that meets these regulations. But I think what they've now done is taken a step back and looking at a broader view of the market. Mm-hmm. Where's the customer, right? Where's the customer demand? And where's the regulation? And they're realizing, wait, they're realizing the same thing we are, which is there's a gap.
I'm glad that they realize that there is a gap, though. It's insane.
Yeah, for sure.
Question. Toyota just announced that the plant for the new battery factory is going live in the U.S. You know anything about that? You got anything you can give us on that?
It's very exciting. Yeah, Toyota's building it has been for a while, building a battery plant in North Carolina.
Right.
Which is going to allow, batteries for all types of electrified vehicles.
Oh, electrified versus electric. You did it. I love it. Yeah.
Electrified. Hybrid batteries, plug-in hybrid batteries, and full EV batteries.
So it's for the whole gamut. It's not just for electric cars.
They're going to be able to produce all these things with big capacity, right here in North America, which is great. I think it insulates the supply chains from international shocks.
Sure.
It puts this supply chain closer to home. From a logistics standpoint, one thing about batteries is what's one thing that's unique about batteries? It's they're very heavy, right?
Yeah.
So to transport these across the world, not just
to build them here. Sure.
There's also an environmental footprint that goes along with that, right? So having them closer to home, yes, it's across the country from us. Doesn't matter. It's a lot closer than across the continent. So I think it's exciting. It'll allow Toyota to get them into the vehicles that they're building in North America faster and get those vehicles to us faster. Ultimately, allow us to get them to our customers faster who are desiring them.
That's huge.
Sounds
I love
like
that.
the perfect recipe.
Perfect recipe. I love it.
Hopefully,
Toyota, Toyota seems well ahead in the strategy.
Yeah.
Makes me very happy to be part of it.
But on that
Absolutely.
note, though, what's your stance on electrification then? I mean, would you say that you recommend everyone driving one? Would you drive one?
No, well, of course. I mean, electrification can be broadly defined, as we talked about, right?
Yeah.
So electric vehicles are not for everyone, right? They're for some people. They're not for everyone yet, given their lifestyle, given their situation. 50% or so of the people that live in Southern California live in an apartment or a condo, right? Those people may or may not have access to charging, right?
Sure.
So how is that going to work for them? So we need to find technologies, or we need to continue to have technologies available for people that meet their lifestyle, right? All the while reducing carbon emissions, but also making sure people can live their lives and don't have to do extra things that's going to cost them money or cause them inconvenience. People want to just be able to make things easy. And that's really Toyota. We make it easy.
But I think I got to rewind on the easy, because you're sort of a subject matter expert on the challenges of these alternative fuels. So I'm going to dig in a little bit before we wrap this up. But you have had right now you have an electric BZ4X that you have to charge. You're a busy guy. You're all over the place. It's not like you don't have a lot of miles to drive. But you've also had Mirais, which are hydrogen. So you're literally, the last 7-8 years, have driven vehicles that are very difficult to load the energy source they need to go from place A to place B. So would you do it again? So you get done with the BZ, are you going to go back? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I've personally enjoyed driving new technology, right?
So you're good with it so
fortunately, a few years back, I got the opportunity to drive the Mirai fuel cell vehicle, which is a very unique vehicle. For those of you that don't know about it, there's only a few places you can get one. Fortunately, one of them is here, but it is a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. So you fill it with hydrogen.
Yes.
And the chemical reaction between hydrogen and oxygen creates electricity, which is stored in a fuel cell of the car, which then propels the car.
And it's glorious.
So it's
science.
It's amazing.
High torque, high horsepower, zero emission, and you can fill it up in less than 5 minutes.
And there is a byproduct, though. What's the byproduct?
There's a byproduct. That byproduct is clean water.
Clean water.
Comes
Out of
out
what
of-
would be the tailpipe. We don't really call it a tailpipe,
Right.
but clean water.
Clean water comes out of it. So why doesn't everyone have a hydrogen car? Right? Put
Infrastructure.
hydrogen in,
Yeah.
zero emissions, great power.
Unbelievable.
Right? You can save the world. But what's the problem with it? Right? It's the actual fuel that goes in it. It's limited. It's not limited on this earth. It's the most dominant element on planet Earth. However, harnessing it and making it converting it into something that can fuel a car is a lot harder, right?
Yeah.
So there's a limitation on infrastructure for hydrogen vehicles. I truly believe that someday hydrogen may actually overtake electric. Now, we're nowhere near that time,
Interesting.
but someday
I believe it too.
it's because ultimately for consumers, it's about, in many ways, convenience, right? An electric car could take you a couple hours, depending on the charger, depending on their situation, to charge it and to get back on the road. Whereas your most similar activity to filling up a gas tank is filling up a hydrogen tank. You put it in, 3 to 5 minutes, it pressurizes, you're full of hydrogen, you're back on the road, right? So that's a lot more convenient of a technology, but the infrastructure has to be there. It's not there yet.
So on a flip side, you're full electric in one car and your other car's a hybrid. The hybrid you still love, you dig.
Yeah, I
you
love
prefer-
hybrids. Yeah, so hybrids, ultimate no compromises vehicle. We live in Southern California, right? Active lifestyle, great geography. You can get your car. Why do we live here? The weather's great,
Weather's
except for
great,
today.
a little rainy.
Raining today. The weather's great. You can get in your car, the freedom of your car, and you can drive to San Diego. You can drive to Santa Barbara. You can see some of the most beautiful coastlines in America, right? You want to have a little more excitement in your life, you can get in your car and you drive to Vegas, right?
It's all there.
A hybrid or an internal combustion vehicle gives you the freedom to do those things, whereas a BEV at this moment in time doesn't make that convenient.
Right. So then the last parting words to our listeners, and not just on the car to drive, but more so you went to Washington, you met with legislators, you opened up their eyes, they opened up your eyes. What is the advice? Like, what kind of homework? What sort of what should they be on the lookout? Because obviously we all in the room favor hybrids or plug-in hybrids, but what awareness? What would you say to them? Hey, listener, check it out.
Yeah, I think we had great dialogue with our legislators, and I think as the industry evolves and regulation evolves, we have to stay in very close contact with each other, right? We have to keep those lines of communication open so that there's a good understanding by our legislators, both at the state and the federal level, on what's happening with the customer, right? We're kind of in an affordability situation in this country. Inflation's been high for a few years.
Right.
And we, as business owners and in collaboration with the government, have to make sure that there's policy and there's products that are aligned with reducing inflation and making large ticket items like vehicles affordable for as many people as possible. So keeping those lines of communication open, making sure that we're aligned on policy, hopefully getting some relief on the policy that's coming that may disrupt that affordability.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Is very important.
Very, very much so. Mal, for you, if you had to give some parting words to our guests, now that we know more from Doug on federal government regulations and mandates and fines, what would you say?
Honestly, I'd say that if you're shopping for a new car, I feel like the best choice would to go hybrid. I mean, you get the best of both worlds, right? If you can't really fully commit and you still want to go put in gas, then I think that's definitely the best choice. I mean, I personally am not looking for one just yet. I still love my fully gas car, but the hybrid seems like the next best choice.
Yeah, I think it's a stepping stone, right?
Yeah,
you can move into hybrid. You don't have to think about charging it. You can still put gas in it, but you're going to get extended range. When you go to the gas station, you're going to pay less, which is good.
Yeah.
All those things people need to look at is their cost of ownership. What does it cost you to drive the car, to own the car over time?
I'll think about it.
I think about it. I think for me on my end, what I would have to say to our listeners is this. I'm older than everybody here in the podcast and I'm kind of proud of it, but I lived through the oil crisis and the fuel crisis in the 70s, and I've seen a lot and really witnessed sort of the changing of the technology. And I think for me, I would say to the listener, trust Toyota. Trust Toyota with the choices they're being made with the motors because they've been studying the mandates, they've been studying the industry, they've been studying what is coming down the pike globally and making a decision for what's best to really help satisfy the requirements from all these different governments. But the reality is, Toyota's here to stay.
Yeah.
Prius and hybrids and plug-in electrics, they're here to stay. And really focus on that 1.690. The 1.690 for me is so huge that one electric car has the impact that 6 plug-ins would have or 90 Priuses, hybrids would have for the environment. That's massive. And it would take, 32 years of driving the electric car before you realized the impact of those 90 hybrids. That's big. The listeners need to know that. I'm glad legislation knows that. That's super duper important. I'm glad he had a chance to go there. I wish you had it all on video. I think that'd be really cool for us to play it back and check it out. But thanks again, Doug. We can't thank you enough. We really, really appreciate you sharing this with us. It's an eye-opener. And stay tuned. We'll have different information for you, a different podcast. We have a couple others we're working on. So stay tuned, tune back in, and you'll learn more about behind the scenes and what happens in the automotive industry. Thanks again.